manager, which is when will your project be done? How much is it going to take to complete? So those are really, really important questions that project managers need to attend to.
Yeah,
One of the things.
as you said, the critical path method and PERT charts and things like that were based on the idea that projects were a
Mhm.
set series of tasks that needed to be done, some in parallel,
Mhm.
some in series.
Mhm.
And critical path method especially says identify the tasks that have to be done one after the other in a particular order so that
Right.
the next task can't start until the last task is complete. When you
Mhm.
find when you find the series of those that defines how long your project
Mhm.
has to be, then that's where you pay your attention. But that's not really how project management works today, is it?
Yeah, well, and one of the interesting things that we've witnessed more recently is this shift to more of a digital way in which companies provide services. And this is where you see some of the techniques, like the ones that we had learned about, and a lot of us are leveraging now, like Scrum, which is part of the Agile family. So, just as you pointed out, in the past, there was a lot of upfront planning that went into understanding how long something was going to take to get done and how much it would cost. And those techniques that we saw earlier are still very effective. But increasingly, what we've discovered is that, in fact, we can deliver our projects faster by really finding ways in which we enable the people doing the work. So, finding ways that they can engage, collaborate, interact. Scrum and others in the Agile family really help us sort of break down those silos of all the divided responsibility that in the past were a little more effective for delivering projects, but now we work in sort of this digital domain. We've got increasingly sort of more global perspectives on the services and the products we offer. So we need to have something more responsive, more adaptive to change. And Scrum and Agile really helps us with that, which is why many organizations now are making that pivot, that shift to agile delivery, because it allows them to respond more quickly to change, allows them to satisfy their markets more quickly, and helps them respond to big changes that we often see, like the pandemic. What do you do when those occur? Agile is a pretty good answer to that.
Thank you. So this is it's still in the scale of human of human endeavor. uh, it's still fairly new.
Right.
uh, it's a it's a set of skills that you can apply universally.
Hmm.
Can you think of any part of the working world where project management wouldn't be helpful?
It's so interesting to ask that question because really, honestly, there's no part of the working world that project management isn't going to be essential. And in fact, it's like I said earlier, not just every industry, every size of organization, but even us personally. Don't we all at times have to apply project management skills to how I'm going to organize the garage this weekend? Or, I've got all these tasks I need to get done today. Which ones are the most important? What sequence do I need? You highlighted dependencies. We need to think about that. And we apply those techniques and skills just in our day to day activities. So when we think about how a large enterprise needs to think about delivering a large project, well, project management is going to be a critical skill that they need to really apply and lean on.
Yeah, and if everything was like ordering a piece of flat pack furniture online and then having the instructions to build it, you would be able to follow a series of tasks in a
Right.
set order and and know that you would reliably complete the project. But the world around us really isn't always like that. So it's necessary to be able to understand where the fixed tasks are and where the processes are and how to
Mm.
interact between those.
Yeah, really good points. Particularly about that process piece is, we need to think about what process we need to follow. What are the things, as a project manager, we're going to hear more about, but you're thinking not just budget and schedule, clearly those are going to be important, but risks, people management. How do we get people engaged? How do we sort of deal with change management, communication? Those are all kind of concepts that become really important in the project management domain.
Yeah. And there's the other side of the equation. You have management always asking you how soon can we deliver this, and how much is this going to cost, and how
Hmm.
many people are you going to need, and all of those types of resource and certainty questions
Yeah.
that you have to be able to answer to your best of your ability. But s- certainty in an uncertain world is a nice thing to shoot for, not always achievable. And the project manager's challenge and responsibility is to try to deal with the uncertainties and bring things closer to the goals that management has set. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, every industry, every company, every job description really involves project management skills. And as Brian said, those skills uh, spill over into your personal life. Um,
Hmm.
Being able to figure out how to get ready for a trip, or say clean out the garage, or rebuild, remodel your house, or
Right.
plan for a future promotion or new career. All of those things are personal aspects of project management as well. So, can you kind of take us through these different aspects of kind of this is like looking at the blind men looking at the elephant and each touching a different part. Yes. Um,
That's
so
right.
can you take us through these?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you pointed out, these are universal skill sets. Every organization, every industry is going to be interested in understanding some of these concepts, particularly when it comes to these important initiatives. And one thing to recognize too is typically projects are vehicles in which organizations are making significant investments. And as a consequence, they're really interested in all the way up to their senior executive levels. How well are those investments progressing? Are they going to generate the return that we anticipate? So often, as a project manager, you're working closely with some of the most senior members of an organization. And they need, as we can see in this list here, some deliverables. So you're going to help them better understand how you're approaching this problem, solving this, creating opportunities for the organization. So things like developing a project plan. Let's think about all those different activities, as you kind of pointed out. Some of them are on this critical path. Let's understand where that critical path is so we can protect that and make sure it doesn't impact our delivery dates. Also, just understanding when do we expect or need people to come in. Very large projects are sometimes need to bring on board 20, 30, 50, hundreds of people. So we have to give some thought to where are they going to work and what kind of tools and services they need. So the project plan becomes a really important tool for a project manager to kind of look at, understand how work is progressing. Are you on track? How does it affect your forecasts and your budgets? And then, of course, you have deliverables within that plan. These are those tangible assets that you're going to create as part of delivering a project. Sometimes they're documents, sometimes they're reviews, sometimes they're functionality. Any number of things could be considered deliverables. As a project manager, you want to have a clear line of sight to what those are because they're really instrumental in determining how well you're progressing. You've got to bring project people on. The project itself is going to be supported by people. So as a project manager, you're often very involved in identifying the right skill sets for the different roles and deliverables that you have in your plan. And then, of course, you've got to lead and manage these teams. So as a project manager, you've got to have good people and leadership skills. A lot of times that involves what's the intent, what's the purpose, what's the why behind the work that we're doing, and helping the team kind of progress. When they run into bottlenecks or impediments, you need to be there to help remove those so they can continue to deliver value. And then methodologies, and that's just a way in which we describe processes that you mentioned earlier, Stuart. And there's different types of processes. Some are more conventional, traditional. Often we call those waterfall. They kind of work in a very linear fashion. And then nowadays we're using more agile practices, which are more focused on rapid delivery, getting feedback, making adjustments. All that helps us determine a schedule that we can communicate both to leadership and stakeholders, but also the people that are waiting for this new functionality, when they can expect to get it, and maybe even having phases that we work through in our project. And then we get an opportunity to kind of assign work to the people that we brought on board. and then message upwards to our leadership, our upper management, explaining how we're progressing and where at times we might need help.
Yep.
And this is where leadership leans in and supports the project.
Yeah, and that brings up the point of the communication between the project manager and the project team members as well, because
Mm.
you have to hold not only assign tasks to people, but you have to hold them accountable for progress on those tasks.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember,
Hmm.
um, I remember at one point in my career working with a manager who was responsible for managing a team of software developers, but had no knowledge of the kind of skills in technology and software development at the time.
Mm.
And his only ability in terms of handling communication from his team members was to say, "How much longer is this going to take?" And when they would answer, "Well, it's going to take longer than I thought," it's like he wasn't able to interrogate them about why is that, what blockers or roadblocks are you running into,
Hmm.
how can I help?
Right.
Um, Really an important skill to be able to make that a two-way communication and understand um, from the perspective of the project manager. Well, if it's going to take you longer, why is that? Where are the places we can apply different resources? And understanding enough about the work that's being done or what questions to ask in order to
Hmm.
be able to manage that process intelligently. So there's a lot of different aspects and communication skills, people management skills, technical skills of understanding relationships between tasks and being able to lay out a schedule, a budget. All of those things are make this kind of a what you used to call a Renaissance man type of.
Right.
You,
Renaissance
you have
man.
to be you have to be capable in a lot of different areas.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So here are some interesting quotes about project management came across. And the first one is from the Project Management Institute with whom you work.
Hmm.
Yeah, the they are calling today's environment the project economy,
Mm.
and that comes from a Harvard Business Review article from about a year ago.
Hmm.
So the project economy is one in which people have the skills and capability they need to turn ideas into reality, and that's really what project is, right?
Yeah, essentially, at the end of the day, you've got these ideas, you've got opportunities you want to pursue, maybe challenges or problems you need to solve. And then how do you kind of manifest those into something real? And this is what a project manager's role is really about. I often think of a project manager a little bit like the conductor of an orchestra. You've got all these different instruments and performers, they can be highly skilled, but it's up to that conductor to kind of bring them all together to create that powerful symphony that really kind of affects and brings us to our feet. So that's really the role of a project manager. So taking those ideas, making them real.
Yeah. Um, those who plan do better than those who do not plan, even though they rarely stick to their plan, as Winston Churchill, the great leader of the 20th century, said. And it relates to something that Napoleon, no, not Napoleon, a military strategist named Karl von Clausewitz said, which is,
Hmm.
your plan will not survive first contact with the enemy,
Right.
which is the idea that you make your plan and you anticipate what you're going to do, and then you need to be aware that reality will change the situation you're in dynamically, and you be able to adapt your plan constantly. So
Hmm.
having the plan is very important because otherwise you're just reacting and not reacting
Yeah, it's that
structured
plan.
way.
So important. I like to quote one of the famous project managers, Mike Tyson, who often says, "Everyone's the plan until they get punched in the face."
Yes, that's
So
the restatement of von Clausewitz's principle.
that's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's so.
um, the next quote is really a important insight for project managers and people who you know, if you go back to the first quote, which is you need to be able to turn ideas into reality. Henry Ford reminds us, and Thomas Edison used to say something similar, which is when you fail, that's not the end of the road. It's an opportunity to start again
Mm,
with more knowledge and more experience than you had before. So failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. So great
that's
thing
so
to
true.
remember, and that's also an important skill of project management, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. In fact, these days in particular, project managers are being looked to kind of help organizations understand, is this a path we want to continue to invest in? And we need to get results that tell us that, in fact, yep, this is the right direction. And if not, we need to pivot or maybe even park this work and choose something else that we want to pursue. So, as a project manager, your organizational leadership is going to be coming to you time and time again and saying, hey, how's this looking? Should we keep going down this path? So you really kind of are, you use the term entrepreneurial when you're introducing me. And I think that's a really important
Hmm.
element of being a project manager. You need to assess, is this the right investment for your organization?
Yeah. Um, and then, of course, Peter Drucker, who is one of the greatest management experts and thinkers of the 20th century, also said, plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work.
Yeah.
So you can have great plans and great ideas, but you have to put in the work to implement them. And project managers are the people who catalyze that process, who turn the idea into a plan for the work and then direct the efforts around that work. So
Hmm.
it's a really central set of skills. If you're a formal project manager as your full time job, program manager, um, that is an important role. And if you're in a more other position, as we've talked about before, if you're in any other position responsible within your organization, you have that same set of responsibilities and skills that you need to apply. So,
Hmm.
um, good opportunity to remind everybody. You have questions for Brian, please put them into the Q&A, and we'll be getting to those shortly.
Yeah.
And tracking them there. I'll try to look through the chat as well. But,
Hmm.
do put your questions in the Q&A if you can. Project Management Institute um, have done some recent studies. 2.3 million people needed each year to fill project management oriented positions uh, by 2030. Each year, 2.3 million. By 2027, employers will need a total of 88 million people worldwide employed in project management oriented roles. So this is a big part of the working world and the world economy. A
Hmm.
lot of opportunity. Um, kind of a staggering number, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but it really just tells you, to your earlier point, this is so instrumental to every organization, every industry. Project managers, what they leverage to grow and to expand and to address challenges, identify opportunities. So it doesn't surprise me we're seeing this. And also, recognize, we're in a very exciting time in our societal civilizational development. We've got all these large initiatives ranging from shifts to more renewable energy. Of course, everyone's, I'm sure, heard about Chat GPT, artificial intelligence. So there's going to be so many projects emerging that organizations are going to say, yeah, we want to leverage those new ideas that are starting to emerge. We want to respond to some of this market demand as we shift to more renewable energy uses. And it's going to be project managers driving all that.
Yeah. If you think about what it took to set up an online enterprise,
Hmm.
for example, something like Salesforce, back in the day that it was beginning, you
Hmm.
had to obtain uh, s- server rooms and lots
Hmm.
of hardware to create um, large computing resources for people to tap into for their distributed software as a service. And you had to uh, create all that infrastructure. You had to create all the software. You had to create all of the documentation. You had to create all of the user interfaces. Um, if you think about what it takes to get started in a digital business today, you can turn to resources where you can get computing power, storage, all of that available. You can turn to resources that will do almost turnkey uh, development of the user interfaces for you. You have Chat GPT now as tools that will help you generate documentation.
Hmm.
So uh, the, the real consistent challenge between then and now is you need somebody who understands all the parts that have to be put in place, how to coordinate the work. So project management is one key skill that still oversees all of these different tools now that the tools are different and resources are, in a sense, easier to get. You still have
Mhm.
to have somebody who understands how to deploy them.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, one of the things that the Project Management Institute has been tracking very closely is that the need for these skills is so pervasive in organizations that even though you might not have a role of a project manager, these skills are still going to be really, really valuable in any other role capacity in an organization. So you might be working in HR, director of HR, you're still going to need project management skills. You could be working in the engineering domain, customer support. So this is definitely something that the PMI has witnessed, and they're really actually leveraging pretty effectively, kind of making these ideas, these concepts, these skills available to a wider audience because organizations are just needing to pull on them so much.
Yeah. So here's just a few of the formal job titles that fall under the heading of project management. But as we just discussed, whatever title you're in, you'll have uh, ability to leverage project management skills. But can you talk about how these different titles relate to each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we got project managers. Of course, that's what we've been spending a lot of time discussing. They're really the ones close to the solution, thinking about important, topics like budgets and resourcing and schedules and risk management. We have program managers, and they often are pulling together several related projects that together need to execute to deliver some kind of outcome. So, program managers kind of operating at a little higher level and as a result often have a bit more of a span of responsibility and authority within an organization. And then you've got agile scrum masters, and these are, I think, a very exciting new role that has emerged in a sort of a shift to a more digital economy. And agile scrum masters are really embedded with the teams. They're kind of where the action is, and they're boots on the ground, getting very close to the solution, working with teams, identifying where there's impediments, getting them out of the way for the team. And what's really powerful about this, I think, Stuart, is one is you've got very clear sort of career paths that you can choose to follow. And you've got these branches you can explore. And, for some of us, we're going to be a little bit more interested in maybe working at, more of the senior levels and building out, complex plans, thinking hard about, those bigger budgets, portfolios. But in some cases too, we might just want to be closer to the work being done and we get
Mhm.
more satisfaction from that. So what's powerful about this career space is you've got these paths open to you that I don't think many other career areas have the same degree of. So this is part of what gets me excited about project management. You just have so many options available to you.
Yeah, and then you think about if you're an individual contributor and you're being asked at some point to lead a team of your fellow contributors,
Hmm.
then you start looking at, well, how do I do that, and what are the project management skills I'll need to be able to coordinate the work of the people around me. So that's a perfect example of how somebody who might not be in a quote unquote project management job uh, needs to be able to draw on that same set of skills. And
Mhm.
these are just some random names I pulled off of Glassdoor from people who are currently hiring in the field and offering good jobs at good salaries. Um, there are many other things I could have listed. Lockheed Martin, I could have listed
Sure.
the government agencies of various types, all of
Mhm.
whom are constantly looking for people in these areas, but these are job listings, companies that have job listings up on Glassdoor.com right now,
Mhm.
all over the world, large multinational corporations, not always in the digital space. Amazon, of course, is digital e-commerce.
Mhm.
Microsoft, Google, IBM, Cisco infrastructure. Microsoft, Google, IBM, more in the digital space. Meta is social media.
Right.
Tata consultancy, Emphasis consultancy. So here's this is one narrow slice of the world, but almost any company in any industry is going to be out there looking for project managers, one way, shape, or form. So
Right, right. Yeah, other classic examples, think Tesla and Elon Musk and his SpaceX definitely
yep,
leveraging a lot of some of the best project managers available because they know how important it is. And just again, look at these marquee names. Any one of these would be fantastic organizations to be part of, to work within, to learn from. So again, this makes this a very exciting area.
yeah,
And it's not just in this one space. It's healthcare is drawing a lot on project management, telecommunications, all these areas
yeah,
always need project management.
yeah. I was going to mention Elon Musk because we talked earlier about turning ideas into reality, and
Mhm.
Elon Musk is really great with big ideas, and you might some people scoffed at him when he said things like, "We're going to send people to Mars,"
Right.
um, but he understood that there's a series of projects you have to fulfill in order to be able to get there,
Hmm.
and he built up a business, you know, that funds itself by launching satellites for other agencies and gives ability to develop the technology that will ultimately deliver human beings to Mars. So it's kind of
Wow.
an interesting example of using, you know, project management in an intelligent way to build up a series of projects towards an ultimate very large goal. You get
Hmm.
paid well for this, right?
Oh yeah.
I
It's
mean,
pretty
these are
compelling.
project manager is kind of the catch-all entry level title. Program manager, a little bit step up in the career chain. Agile Scrum Master because it has specific skills that
Hmm.
are more specialized, can command a higher salary. But how do people move, from the upper left of this chart to the bigger numbers toward the right and to the bottom?
Yeah, and as you rightly highlighted, as you kind of make that progression left to right, there's going to be an expectation about experience. So
Yes.
generally, you start in that project management, maybe even prior to that, project coordinator, kind of make that progression up. And then as you get more experience, you get an opportunity to kind of get those larger initiatives that you're going to be responsible for. But don't lose sight of the fact that it's not just that. You need training, you need certifications to kind of demonstrate you're in a place to do that. As you pointed out, Agile Scrum Masters, very kind of more specific expertise that organizations are looking for. And there's kind of a duality to this. On the one hand, we hear Agile Scrum Masters, a lot of what Agile Scrum Masters focus on tend to be kind of, pretty common sense techniques, right? Finding ways to get the most from people, but actually it's the art that goes behind that's what organizations are really prepared to compensate for. But I mean, just look at these numbers, Stuart. I mean, these are pretty enticing. So I'm not saying that's the reason to get into this space, but it is a nice reward from pursuing something that really helps you kind of find your fulfillment. So yeah, I think this is sort of a nice side benefit of being in
Yeah,
this.
that is right, Brian. It's a good, you know, as I said, one of the personal projects people undertake is how to develop their career path, and so
Hmm.
this is part of the information you can have for that project. So you talk to us about some of the skills that people get through study, through education, through certification, that they then turn into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So got a pretty solid list here. It starts off with that PMP, that stands for the Project Management Professional Certification. So this is a certification from the Project Management Institute, a global certification, authentication organization. So with that skill, with that certification, it's really pointed to the fact that you understand the whole breadth of project management. This includes knowing how to, manage budgets, develop schedules, communicate effectively, manage and address risks, think about change management, all the things that come into effectively managing a large scale project. But then in addition, we've got Agile. We talked a little bit about how Agile plays in this new world order that we're kind of shifting towards, which is all about rapid delivery, making quick adjustments based on feedback. So Agile and Scrum are a set of kind of practices that you can lean on to be more responsive. And of course, risk management. And this is some part of project management often doesn't get as much as attention as it probably needs to, because this is probably what influences so much about the success of the project. If you think of schedule and you think of budgets, those two important criteria that organizations are looking to understand for these projects, risk is one of the things that is going to affect both of those. What's our
Yeah,
risk exposure? How do we manage that?
it gets back to Mike Tyson and learning learning how to keep your guard up, because that's one of the ways to manage risk, and
Right.
also
Mhm.
understanding what to do after you've gotten punched in the face.
That's right. Because that is sort of the reality we're dealing with when it comes to projects. There will be changes, assumptions you didn't anticipate. And then we look at the right hand side. So this is when we see ideas like Lean Six Sigma. So this is a really important concept. I know you've got a lot of familiarity with this. This is about identifying opportunities to remove waste, to become more efficient, to use data to help us understand if we're performing within sort of a reasonable range in a control process. So I think you mentioned this. This is sort of a manufacturing concept that came out in
Mhm.
the 50s, 60s.
Oh, much. I think Six Sigma is more recent, although it evolved from the notions of quality control that came up after World War II. There's
Right.
a whole story about American quality control, people being called over to Japan to help in
Yes.
rebuilding Japanese society. And their ideas were adopted there faster than they were back in the United States, because the United States, having escaped mass destruction in World War II, they could produce and sell pretty much everything, anything they wanted.
Mhm.
Japanese, of course, had fewer resources, and they had to focus more on the idea of strict quality control. And then Six Sigma, part of that is looking at the statistical aspects of quality control, and then it developed into Lean. So, um, yeah,
Mhm.
it's something that's developed out of the 80s, 90s, and then really took off into the 2000s.
Yeah, very applicable to the world we live in today. So, as a project manager, you're always going to look out for ways to be more efficient, more effective. Lean Six Sigma are great tools to have in your toolkit there. And then we also have products like Microsoft Project. So, this is a great way in which you can represent all the work of a large complex project, keep track of it, report on it. So, having that tool skill set becomes important. Project management offices, PMOs. Organizations often need to create a special part of their organization, a project management office, to coordinate all the different projects, make sure project managers are being effectively onboarded, trained, and supported. So, understanding the different types of project management office structures, understanding how to grow, expand, and support them. And finally, customer-centric digital transformation. We talked a bit about this earlier. Many of those companies you kind of showed in the previous slide, they are all in that digital transformation space. And organizations are increasingly recognizing software is a really important means in which they can deliver service and products. So they're really focusing on how do we make that customer-centric. So as a project manager, this could be a space you're going to be working in quite closely. Having a good understanding of what success looks like, how to manage these kind of digital transformations is indispensable.
Yeah, Brian, that's an interesting aspect that was really driven home with the advent of the pandemic, is that companies that thought, oh, I'm not sure about the digital space, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it, and I'm not sure how to do it. suddenly on day one in March of 2020, found out
Mm,
that you had better figure out how to deal with the digital world because your employees are all going to be asked to work from home. Your
mhm,
customers won't be able to come into your stores. You're going to have to do so much of your business and your management online.
mhm.
Suddenly, over that process, had companies seeing, well, I have a competitor now who not only survived this transformation to online, but leveraged it to improve their business and start taking business away from me. How do I deal with that?
Mhm.
How do I now turn to digital transformation as an opportunity rather than a necessity or a threat?
Right, right.
Those are all, this is the, addresses the concept in human resources of the T-shaped skill set, where you need to have a broad range of skills in an area, and then you can pick a place to go deeper and dig down. But the broad range, the bar across the top of the T, lets you be more efficient, more flexible, and more effective in dealing with
Exactly.
your peers. Um, so you want to look at, I mean, different kinds of tools that people use in Six Sigma, in project management, in Agile, all of these different frameworks and tools um, are things people will hear about, maybe need to be exposed to, maybe need to become proficient in. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, we touched on a few of these already. Some of these acronyms might not look really familiar, but we see DMAIC. This actually has its roots in some of what we talked about earlier around Lean Six Sigma, that sort of define, measure, analyze, interpret, and control. Of course, we've got the Agile family that is just become just so sweeping in terms of embraced by organizations. We mentioned the PMBOK, that project management body of knowledge, as well as Lean Six Sigma. And then on the right-hand side, these are more tools. So we got Minitab, statistical analysis tool, very useful for doing some of the Six Sigma analysis, leveraging data. We've got Jira, which is a work management tool predominantly used in the Agile space. Of course, we've got Microsoft Office. I think we're all familiar with that. PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and then Microsoft Project, which is specific to management, project management. This is where you create those Gantt charts you mentioned. It'll actually do the analysis on critical paths. So that tool becomes really instrumental to anyone operating the project management domain.
Yeah. These are some of the things that you would want to have in your toolkit, right, Brad?
Mhm, exactly, right. That's a good analogy. It's a toolkit.
And then the other thing that's important is you become a project manager by doing projects.
Mhm.
And so, um, here are some examples of projects that people can do in programs that will help train them to become project managers and take them through the process, allow them to exercise the tools, understand what they're doing, how their frameworks apply in a real world type of environment. So, uh, is it possible to underemphasize the value of this kind of hands-on work?
Yeah, you really can't underemphasize. You're exactly right. I mean, this is your opportunity to kind of, as you pointed out, pull all those different tools from the toolkit, apply them to real world settings. You see these different, portfolio areas that you can work in. Things like blockchain. Hey, that's a very exciting, very progressive new technology. And this is again where project managers often find themselves. You are the sort of the tip of the spear, leading the charge, trying to figure out how to get the most from these new ideas. I'm certain you're going to see ones associated with AI, because that's just a very
Yep.
emerging space. But don't lose sight of the fact that important large implementations like ERPs, these enterprise resource planning tools that help big companies. You mentioned Lockheed Martin, other companies like that that have huge investments that they are making in capital assets. They use ERPs to kind of keep track of where are our different resources, our assets, our materials. How do we bring those together? So even though that's sort of more of a conventional large scale software system, still very important to be effectively managed. And this is what organizations are going to turn to for project managers to support.
Yeah, and one thing to point out about this type of thing, Brian, these are projects that are drawn from the program we're going to talk about in a minute. But
Mhm.
um, a program like that, which allows you to practice on these types of case studies and projects, means that you're not just going to take your tools that you've learned in the program and try to apply them kind of in a hit or miss fashion in your own organization. You'll have a chance to test run them, test drive them, and use them in a similar fashion within this kind of controlled environment, and then
Mhm.
be able to go into your back into your own organization and say, okay, now I understand how to how to do this process. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Mhm.
go ahead, you can comment on
Well,
that.
I was just going to, one other observations I'm going to share, and I think it's kind of important about this too, is you kind of highlighted this, project management, you become a project manager by managing projects, and you need that experience. But what's also really important too is to have access to experts, experienced mentors who can help you learn these techniques, also give you guidance at times to say, here's something else to consider, here's a different way to approach this. And that's a really important part of this. I think you need to not just learn these techniques, but get support in understanding how to effectively apply them.
Yep, yeah. Otherwise, it's like being given a set of Lego blocks, and you could build whatever you want, but you're not going to learn how to necessarily build a sculpture of the Millennium Falcon, or the
Right.
or Mount Rushmore, or that type of thing, without some coaching.
Right.
Um, did want to make one last comment on this slide. The blockchain. So this is an interesting example, isn't it, Brian? Because it's not a matter of, in order to be a project manager on a project that involves a new technology, I must therefore become expert in that new technology. It's a
Right.
matter of, I need to understand enough about the technology so that I can evaluate what people
Mhm.
tell me about what is feasible and not feasible. Is that correct?
Oh, you're absolutely right. So, yeah, the expectation isn't you become an expert in any particular narrow field, but actually, who the experts are. You leverage their expertise to assess feasibility. Is this something that's actually going to make sense? In this example, for a pharmacy, it sounds like they want to evaluate whether blockchain is going to be a good fit for them. That's what you need to understand as a project manager. What are the outcomes you're kind of trying to achieve? How would you measure success? How do we track that? And then you're relying on the experts, the blockchain experts you're bringing in to actually facilitate and build the functionality. And you're using their progress and the work they're completing to assess, is this something we want to continue to do?
Yeah. And that's going to apply with ChatGPT, and that's going to apply with any other new technology that comes out in the world. Cloud computing,
Mhm.
everything that's in the world around us. So this is where I would now ask the audience for their view. What We're all here because we're interested in project management as a career, or as a skill set to advance our career. And what has stopped you up till now from taking certification in an area like this? Pick one, two, three, or all four of these. Leave this open for about another 20 seconds. Chance to think about this. I will close the poll in about 10 seconds. So if you can wrap up, hit that submit button. I'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and share the result. We're looking at the most concerning thing is finding a program that gives you practical experience that you can use to demonstrate that you learn these skills and can apply them. And then, of course, people are also concerned with finding a comprehensive curriculum and finding something that fits into their schedule. So,
Mhm.
um, just wanted to view that. I'm going to move on. Before we get to the questions and answers, I'm going to introduce this idea of the program, postgraduate program in project management. This is a program designed by University of Massachusetts at Amherst, Eisenberg School of Management, supervised by them, delivered by Simplilearn in a fully online format. So wherever you are in the world, you can take this program. Given the pricing in US and India, but you can check with us for the pricing in your local country. We have people from all around the world today. 6-month program, 10 to 15 hours a week. Is that a practical schedule, Ryan? Are people able to succeed in learning what they need to know through this program in 6 months?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the 10 to 15 hours a week, there's definitely recognition that for most of the people participating in this, they have other job responsibilities, life responsibilities. We want to find ways in which they can kind of get the learning, apply that knowledge in a manageable way. Okay, so this pairs very nicely with those that might already have jobs and careers, and now they're looking for ways to kind of advance those. The thing with the 6 months too is we really want to make sure that we're really focused on getting you these skills quickly so you can bring them into your work environment or look for that next opportunity that fits the skills you just developed. So yeah, so I think it is important, as you're highlighting too, it's just recognizing that this is a commitment. Okay, this is going to require work, effort. You're going to have to apply yourself. But the nice thing about that 10 to 15 hours a week is you've got lots of flexibility of when you apply that time.
Yeah. Some of that is the fixed class schedule for the online instruction with instructors like yourself
Mhm.
who meet with them in class sessions weekly. You interact with them directly. They can ask you questions. You can ask them questions. You can interact with your peers in the class. Um, so that's a great aspect of this. Rather than having to fly someplace or travel someplace and sit in a room, you get the experience of being with the instructor from wherever it is you are.
Mhm.
Other than those fixed class times, you can do the rest of the work on any time that you have available throughout the week. So if you want to review pre-recorded videos that cover different topics and prepare you for next week's class, you want to do your case studies and projects, all of those you do in the same online environment. And some of that material you can even access from your tablet or smartphone if you want to. Um, and it covers comprehensive curriculum. We'll talk about that in just a second here. But we go through this together, Brian, the kind of steps of the curriculum and how it's structured here.
Yeah, absolutely. What makes this program, I think, particularly powerful is it is sort of a series of building blocks. You use the analogy of Lego before. I think this kind of fits here. So first, we want to get everyone a very strong foundation, and that's where the project management professional, that PMP certification, becomes so important. Now, recognize too, this includes getting you to the point that you can successfully pass that exam,
Mhm.
and our instructors, people like myself, we're close to the PMI. We're very familiar with the exam structure to kind of help you be successful there. And once you've got that platform, then we start layering in these new, more advanced concepts like agile, positioning, scrum master skill sets. So as a project manager, you've got those you can add to the toolbox. Of course, we're going to give you some tooling experience with products like Microsoft Project 2019, the latest version of this, kind of get you ready so you can take that tool, apply it in your work environments. And now we see that concept of the project management office, the PMO, emerging. We want to definitely help you understand not just what does a good, effective PMO look like, but also you might be asked to help establish one of these or improve one that already exists. And then finally, we bring it all together into that capstone project. And this is that opportunity not just to take the learnings that you've gained through all these other courses, but to work with your instructors and allow them to give you feedback so you can really strengthen the approach you take to this, so you've got something that is really that capstone that you can bring forward, show to prospective employers or your current employer and say, hey, I have these skills. Here's an example of what I can do leveraging all these ideas that you've learned through the program.
Yep. The electives you see down the right are things that you can choose to do. They don't cost extra. They're included in the program, but they allow you to delve deeper into topics based on your interest and based on how much time you want to put into the program. So if you want to get certified as a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, you want to learn more about digital transformation, you are free to do that in the context of the program. This is a postgraduate program, meaning you have to have a bachelor's degree. It can be in any discipline, doesn't have to be a technical degree. Um, we do want people to come into this program with a minimum of 5 years of work experience so that you understand where in the um, environment, where in your work world the skills will be applied. You don't have to have a programming background. Anything that you need to do on the digital side will be included in the instruction. But Brian, can you comment on the importance of having that work experience?
Yeah, and that is really valuable. We need to, look to folks. It's going to be difficult to apply a lot of these concepts and techniques without some experience and background to pull on. Which is often why, if you look at getting your project management certification, your PMP certification from the PMI, they will require a minimum amount of years of work experience. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a project manager in their work experience, but it does mean you've been exposed to projects, you've been part of a project environment, so you've got familiarity. That could be gathering requirements, it could be implementing something, it could be testing it, whatever it might be. I think most of us are going to be able to draw on that experience, but that 5 year work experience is very valuable to kind of really get the seasoning we often need to be effective as project managers.
Yeah. Um, we also include in the program something that Simplilearn adds, which is working with our recruiting talent and professional development partners in the US and in India. We offer 6 months of access to job assist services. Those regions, we offer access to exclusive job portals, which allow you to do confidential job searches. We offer resume review and rewrite service, which is very important because your resume will go through an automated system before it ever reaches a human being nowadays. So your resume has to be written two ways. One, it has to pass uh, through the automated AI evaluation bot that is going to look for the match between your experience and skills to the uh, job description that was provided by the employer. So once it passes that filter, then your resume goes to a human being who still has to be able to look at it, recognize your worth, see the highlighted skills and experience, so that having the service to rewrite your resume to fulfill both of those purposes is really valuable. Similarly, with the one-on-one interview prep, you know that there are multiple types of interviews that you have to pass in order to get a promotion or a new job, including a phone screen, including skills interviews with potential supervisors and peers, including cultural fit, teamwork interviews. So being able to practice those one-on-one with real human beings is a really valuable aspect of the service. Again, this is available to you for 6 months after you complete the program, and we have a number of people who have completed the program and had excellent results, um, both in terms of what they learned and in terms of what it's done for their careers. So um, this is something that we hope to add you to our list. Well, these are all on our website as well. Based on what we've talked about so far, what Brian and I have shared, is this a program that you might be interested in? Okay, and we'll just close this in 5 seconds. Here's the result. A little more than 80% of the people responding said they are interested. Let me share with you the result and the bonus that we talked about. So it's pretty straightforward enrollment steps, and I'm going to put into the chat right now the email address here. You email us, we verify your educational background, your work experience, and if you qualify, we send you a offer letter. You can see in the chat now that email address is available to you. The next cohort will start on the 1st of June, so just a couple of weeks away. The induction is your basic orientation to how to use the learning management system, where to find your classes, what to expect, and then the actual classes start 10 June. So we recommend that you contact us right away if you want to get into that cohort, or if you want to find out about future cohorts. And as we said, there's a bonus offer. So you saw the pricing in US and India. Again, you can check those in your local area by emailing us or by going to our website, and I'll share that URL momentarily. But you can finance it with the MI financing. And the bonus for attending this webinar is a 10% discount off the program fees. So you'll be able to take 10% off of those listed fees just for being here today, this evening, this morning, wherever you are. And that is our gift to you for being with us today and hearing us out. So again, email us at askus@simplilearn.net. I'm going to, before we go into the last question here, I am going to go into the Q&A. So I'm going to stop the sharing here, and we'll just go into the many questions we have in Q&A. I don't know how much time we'll have for all of those, but should project managers be open to work in any type of industry, or should they be focused on a particular industry?
That's a great question. Generally speaking, as a project manager, you're not going to be expected to be so-called a domain expert. But it isn't uncommon for project managers to develop expertise in a particular domain. So if that's something you're getting a lot of fulfillment from, then by all means, kind of pursue that path. Just speaking from my own experience, I've worked in healthcare and oil and gas and telecommunications and software. And many times I'm learning about a new product and area and just having to figure it out. But I'm not expected to be the expert. I'm expected to be able to manage and coordinate and get a result.
Okay. What do you think about the trend software industry where teams are being asked to be more self-driven? How do project management skills play into that environment?
That's a really powerful question, and I think you're exactly right. There is absolutely a trend that has been gaining momentum, and this is where Agile becomes so important as a project manager. Organizations recognize they want to sort of thin the many layers of management they have, let their people doing the work get closer to the customers that need the work that they're delivering. Agile is really the practice that really helps organizations achieve this. This is why, Stuart, when you're showing some of the salary expectations, Scrum Masters are actually kind of top of the charts because organizations see how important Agile is to kind of help them connect more with their customers. So
Yep.
I think there is definitely a shift that direction. But again, don't lose sight of the fact that those core project management ideas, principles around managing to schedules and delivering to outcomes and addressing risk and people management, they don't go away. So you're just going to have to take all those different skills and apply them in those settings.
Yep. How about project management and contract worker setting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm often a consultant contract worker brought in. So in fact, it is a great portable skill to bring with you. I really enjoy that because it gives me so much opportunity to work across different industries and organizations, each one sort of a fresh new experience, which I find really kind of energizing and engaging. So if that's a path that interests you, then project management is a great direction to take.
Yep. We have a question about the recording being shared, and yes, we will be sharing the recording. I'm hoping that this is recording properly for everyone. And so we'll send a follow-up email with a copy of this recording. What's the future of project management with the context of generative AI?
Hmm.
How are those tools going to change project management?
Well, I think that is a fantastic question, and I would like to say I could tell you exactly what that's going to look like, but I don't think any of us really know. And we know that AI is advancing very quickly, and we're seeing some really powerful examples of how it can help us do our work. So there's no doubt it's going to have an impact on the way all of us are working. I think project management is not going to be any different there. However, what I can tell you though, all those AI-driven projects initiatives are going to need some project management to help them get implemented and properly delivered. So I think project management is pretty disruption proof. You'll always need project managers regardless of the new technology or directions that industry might be taking.
Yeah, and on a practical level, if you type into ChatGPT, what is my project plan for implementing this given project? It's not going to know about the resources you have in your company or the limitations you have in your company, what you are able to do. So it can give you generic answers about these are the kinds of tasks that you might want to have,
Mhm.
but it can't really manage a project for you
Right.
at that level. Um, that's not to say that AI tools aren't being incorporated into project management tools, but that's a different challenge.
Mhm.
Legal project manager. We have a question from Ishan who asks, "What's the difference between general project management and legal project management?"
Hmm. Well, I think the simple answer to that is, legal project managers are going to have a little more narrow focus. Broader project management, you're going to learn skills that can be applied in construction, to software development, to customer service, whatever it might be. The legal profession has its own specific needs. So examples, I mean, a lot more emphasis on document management, a lot more emphasis on privacy and security and sort of protection of these important intellectual property assets. So now again, those are still important concepts in every other aspect of project management of the industries, but in the legal profession, there's probably some of the very specific areas that you need to have more expertise in.
Yep. Is it necessary to get CAPM or PMP certification to start as a project manager?
Not necessary. Many people get introduced to project management mostly because they're told, hey, we're in a project. Can you help us with this? But those certifications, the CAPM, certainly the PMP, are going to give you the structure that you can lean on to kind of more effectively and successfully manage your projects. But there's no requirement that to become a project manager, you must have a CAPM first. That's sort of the introductory certification that PMI offers. No, not at all.
Okay. Um, Twinkle, who says, "I'm a business development management. Um, being a fresher where you have to manage timelines and teams. Uh, how do you get started?" Some of the essence of the question is, how do you get started in understanding um, how to manage projects, especially having to do with budgeting, scheduling, man loading?
Mm. Yeah. So, that is sort of the heart of project management. And there are skills and techniques that you're going to need to leverage. Part of the reason this program places that emphasis on the PMP as a foundation is because the PMP is structured to answer those questions and give you those skills and those techniques so you can build out good schedules with supporting budgets. So there's a lot that goes into that, and I think we probably need to have a number of courses that you progress through to really get a good answer to that. But consider that as sort of the foundation to kind of get you to the point of being an effective project manager.
Yeah, we have several questions that relate to transition into project management from other areas where you might not have had the experience, where you might have had experience in doing other types of tasks. So,
Mhm.
how do you get started in that transition?
Well, and actually the good thing is you've got some work experience and, you've probably been involved in a project in one form or another through that work experience. So that's the platform by which we're going to grow those skills. And this is sort of what you're highlighting earlier, Stuart, about how important it is to have some of the practical real world experience. Organizations do want to see, some of that seasoning that you can bring into the role of a project manager. So you do need to spend some time in that space, but it can be from any number of roles. And there's
Right.
lots of ways in which we can learn about projects just by being part of a project.
Yep. Um, we have a question about the final handover process in the sales cycle, and I can talk a little bit to that, having been in that environment. And the idea of what you need to know, what you need to have gathered from the customer's requirements in order to be able to take the sales contract and turn it over to the implementation team. Um, that's an important aspect of project management. Is
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it really comes back to just as you said, what are the requirements? What is our customer? What do they need? Because that's what we have to deliver. So, as a project manager, you actually have to get very adept, very skilled at understanding what your customer needs. And the other part of that is checking in with that customer and saying, hey, I'm building this. Is this really what you want? And if you want to make some adjustments, tell me now before I'm all done. And then it'd be quite costly to make those changes. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Stuart. It's about getting those requirements, understanding them, and making sure we're checking in as we deliver them.
yeah, in many environments, the project manager gets involved with the sales team because
Mhm.
they want to be involved in defining those requirements before the contract's signed. So,
Right, right.
um, how do you deal with clients who want something extra that they don't want billed?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting in the project management. First off, it's really important to recognize that anytime you're delivering something that you have not contractually committed to, you're actually stepping outside of your scope. And a good project manager is going to manage your scope. So when a person asks for something that wasn't specified, generally to project managers are going to say, well, that wasn't included in our scope. If that's something that you want, we absolutely understand. Let's look at the impact on our project, on its budget, on its schedule. So we want to be very thoughtful. And sometimes, in fact, we're going to hear this term gold plating. We use that in the project management space to represent when we're doing more than we need to. And you might think at times that actually makes your customer happier, but the truth is, in fact, it can introduce a lot of additional risk because when you add more features or functionality, you need to test them and they could have impacts on other parts of your product. You have to support them after you go live. So sometimes we have to be careful. Giving people more than they ask for often ends up making them less happy. So good project managers focus on the scope that was agreed to, and they tend not to do the things out of scope.
That's always a good piece of advice for people who bill by the hours, that you should try to keep everything within scope so that you're not going to get picked to death by piecemeal requirements.
Right.
Um, if a question from somebody who wants to understand the special skills that you might need to be a project manager in construction, and one thing I can point out is that unlike their background, they say is in IT logistics and technical areas, um, when you get into construction, you have to deal with things like regulation, permitting, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of involvement with government agencies and that type of thing. And those are things that can definitely impact, when you can start work, when you can move on from one phase of work to the next, having inspections done and that type of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
but these are things that you'll learn from the people who work with you in your construction area. And so, what other kind of places would you recommend somebody look for that kind of advice and
Well,
preparation?
that's a great, really important observation. Is as a project manager, first off, you're not expected to know everything. So where do you go to get the information? Well, you go to the team. They have the expertise. You go to your stakeholders, the people that work in this domain and industry. Even as you highlighted, permitting and regulations. Well, it's going to be difficult as a project manager to know all the different types of permitting regulations, particularly if you're doing an implementation in different parts of the world. So you need to turn to trusted experts who can give you guidance and advice, and then you incorporate it into your schedule and your budget.
Okay. I'm looking through here. We're running toward the end of our time, but can you comment on the different methodologies and which one is more in demand now, or how they apply in different situations between things like Prince, Agile, PMA certification,
Hmm.
waterfall methods, things like that?
Yeah, great question. I don't know there's a really simple answer to this, but generally speaking, what I would offer is the following. Agile in particular is really kind of getting a lot of attention from organizations because of the fact it really focuses on people. It's very people-centric, which organizations recognize as important if they're going to be successful, both attracting people and enabling them. So Agile is a good place to kind of focus on. Now, that doesn't mean other practices and techniques like waterfall have disappeared. No, absolutely. We're going to need waterfall, particularly in domains like construction, which has a lot more of those physical hard constraints, and waterfall works very effectively in those spaces. You mentioned Prince 2. Well, that's another type of certification body similar to the Project Management Institute. Prince 2 a little more predominant in Europe. So if you're working with a client that's in Europe, maybe you're based in Europe, you might be a little bit more interested in taking a Prince 2 path. But the Project Management Institute is a global organization. That certification is recognized in every country around the world. So that's probably your safer bet. So my guidance would be, if you had to pick, probably emphasize Agile and Project Management PMI certification. That pairing works really effectively across all industries.
And in the UMass program that we talked about, you're being trained to pass the PMP test, right?
Right, exactly.
Uh,
Um,
so when you've completed the UMass program, you're able then to move into the test for PMP certification.
Yes, yes. In fact, we're going to put a heavy emphasis on getting you exam ready for that PMP exam. And it's a demanding exam. So we want to make sure you're positioned to be successful, which includes, by the way, the program is going to give you lots of practice exams because that's a really good way to kind of get ready for taking that exam. Practice exams are a really important part of your preparation.
Okay. Um, Question about future cohorts, and yes, we do regularly start new cohorts of the program. You will want to check with ask us at simplilearn.net or with our website, and I will share the URL shortly. That will give you uh, information about future cohorts. So, recommend to everybody who's interested in this program, if you're ready to start or not, to email us, and we can help you with future planning as well. Good, interesting question. Is project manager in the waterfall space closer to the product owner, or is Scrum Master in the agile space?
Oh, did you say product owner?
Yeah, so this is literally the question is a project manager in the waterfall space close to a project owner or Scrum Master in the agile space? Which I think works more closely with the product owner, if I understand the
Oh,
question.
yeah. So in that context, Agile uses that term product owner. Scrum Master, product owner are the two roles within the Scrum framework. So they're going to work very closely together. So Agile Scrum is really centered around Scrum Master, product owner. That doesn't mean a more waterfall approach can't engage with an Agile product owner, but conventionally, we'd expect to see that really in the Agile space.
Okay. We have a question from Dion who asks, do I qualify if I don't have a degree but have between 15 and 20 years of experience on mega projects? This is something you'd take up with us by emailing us to find out whether we can relax that requirement for you based on your experience. I can't answer that for you right now. I think, why have we moved to the agile approach all of a sudden? Why is project management general moving to that area? What is the difference and
Great
benefit there?
question. Yeah, so one of the things that Agile again emphasizes is people. It's a very people-centric approach to delivering work. And what does that mean? Well, it means that there's going to be a much more emphasis on interaction, collaboration, and I think generally speaking, we've learned a lot over all the years of organizations developing, growing, and also understanding what people need is that most of us prefer to work with one another. We don't want to be sort of stuck in a screen filling out forms. So this is where Agile's sort of become really popular. The other thing is if we think of digital transformation, the sort of the shift more of a digital economy, well, that means software. Software, the nice thing about software, it's zeros and ones, very easy to flip a 0 to 1. You can create software easily, you can extend software easily. Agile is a great set of techniques to leverage the benefits of digital technologies and technical delivery. So this is where Agile really kind of come into its sort of own in that space.
Okay. So I think that that's all the time we have for questions, and you've been extremely generous with your time, Brian. So
Oh yeah.
I am going to move on to the last part. Sometimes when I do this, Zoom kicks me off briefly. So if that happens, I apologize. I will be back. But let me just share this last couple of questions with the audience. Yes, it's doing that. I'll be back in just a second.
All right. Great. And
It 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 has a strange. I don't see it happening in other contexts.
interesting. Okay. We're
Um,
Oh, maybe Stuart is still reconnecting.
Recording in progress.
There we go.
yes, when I when I share my screen after a period of time, it kind of does that to me. But
Interesting.
should
Okay.
be okay now. So let me start this poll. And for those of you who are interested in enrolling in this program, we just like to get an idea of whether you want to be in the early June cohort or whether you want to plan further down the road. And we had a question about future cohorts and how many people might be looking at even further than that based on your qualifications, experience, that type of thing. And I'll leave this open just for another 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So about half of our audience are interested in either starting in the June cohort or in one of the immediately following. And again, email us at askus@simplilearn.net to get that process started. And if you're looking further down the road, please do email us again. And I'm going to ask this last question. People who are interested, do you need us to reach out to you? Would you like us to contact you directly? And I'll leave this open for just 15 seconds or so. It's yes, no question. And if you answer yes, we will contact you after this webinar in the next day or so. Everyone will receive a follow-up email, including the discount code for the bonus offer and a link to this program recording. Here is the poll result. Almost a 60-40 split. So again, we will reach out to the folks of you who said yes. And let me put into the chat right now the URL for our here. Sure, I don't know if I've been able to capture all of these things in. Yes, okay. Just wanted to make sure that I didn't lose the chat information when I got kicked off.
Hmm.
So here is the URL and the email address again in the chat window. Now, now. Very good. And I want to say thank you to Brian for being so very, as I said, generous with your time, with your knowledge, with your insight, with your experience.
Pleasure. Great to be here. Thanks so much. And really enjoyed our talk and our session today.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody here who took out time from their day, their evening, their morning, wherever you are in the world. As I said earlier, I'm always extremely impressed and very grateful that we have an audience that spans the globe in so many different countries. This QR code can take you also to our webpage. Um, so this concludes our webinar. We hope we can welcome you into the learning community with UMass Amherst and Simplilearn, and have a great morning, evening, or whatever it is, wherever you are. That concludes our webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Recording stopped.